Yellow. What am I talking about today? I'll never set foot in that house again. Never! No. um, if you haven't seen these any of my videos before, the general idea is I'm going to give you a rating right off the bat, then I'll go into why I gave it that rating. I'm not necessarily going to spoil anything, I'm just going to give a little more oomph to the rating. Before I get into anything, I'd appreciate if you could like and subscribe. That'd be cool. Yeah, alright. Get into it. I'll never set foot in the house again. So what is it? Like a 6. Alright. You know, can't complain about much. Art-wise, it looks fine. I would say it's just not very noteworthy art-wise. The story is also kind of like, I've seen it before. I like I like some of like the nuance to it. I think it's like the reason I'm giving it a 6 is more so just like it was a fun read. Wouldn't say it's like deep or anything. It's a little interesting though because it's not. I don't think it's technically an isekai because this is the main character and she is not a reincarnated person. But listen, anything I say in this is going to be within the first 20 chapters, so I'm not going to say it's a spoiler, but if you really, really don't want to hear anything, then you might want to turn away. You done? You gone? Okay. This guy is like a reincarnated person, and there are other reincarnated people within the story, namely this guy, who, I mean, as far as I know, there's only 2, but they are both cases of, like, you know, reincarnated in another world. But they're not the main character, so I don't think this counts as an isekai because this is the main character and she is most definitely not. At least as of now. Hey, I don't know, maybe later on something will happen, but no, not right now. But, you know, general gist of the story, she's mistreated by her family. Oh, wow, that's a new one. And yeah, then she ends up getting like a break because this guy comes and like appraises her skills and finds out, whoa, she has a new skill that no one's ever heard of, so she has to go to the, you know, Royal Institute where they study magic and things like that. Yeah, and of course, like, this guy's like a basically he's the son, he's the current emperor's brother. I don't know if he classifies as a duke or whatever, but gives that vibe. I'll say this, the story really doesn't feel like it has much conflict. Like, they kind of just like, oh, she's mistreated, but they don't really go into that too much, and then they're just like, oh, now we're getting to the sweet part where she's treated well, and it's like, okay. I mean, alright, I guess we're just skipping to it, huh? And then, like, you know, later on, anytime there's like a quote-unquote, you know, villain, they kind of just get, like, bodied in 5 seconds and then it's over. Also, like, the way that she, you know, let's say deals with her family, is kind of like, Jesus Christ. Like, they just, it's like, oh, you're in the mines, you're dead, F off, you know? It's like, it's just like, whoa, okay, I guess we're just going through it real quick. Yeah, then it kind of just turns into like her using her abilities, and the story basically shifts. In a typical story like this, you would have like her family, and then, you know, slowly you're getting rid of them. But in this story, it's like 5 seconds in, it's like bang, get rid of them, like they're done, and then and then it just moves on, and it's like now we're going to a plot where it's like there's miasma, and, you know, she has to destroy it and, you know, get rid of it and everything, and it's like, oh okay, all right. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty general layout, right? Like, she's mistreated, goes and, you know, gets saved basically, and then her family gets dealt with by all the friendly people around her, and it's like, okay, well, that's the gist. You know, there's characters like this guy who's just, I don't know, really interested in magic, so he likes her because she has a new magic that he's never seen. This guy, like I mentioned before, is a reincarnator, and he's like a emperor of another nation. It's like, okay. but that's like the gist. Yeah. She's not a reincarnator, but there are reincarnators in the story, so I'm still doing isekai. Even if it's not on the surface an isekai, it still has an isekai element. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I mean it's fine. Just, you know, it's like one of those stories where it's like the protagonist getting, you know, everything goes well after they were abused, and it's like, okay, that's sweet. But the reason I don't want to give it a high score, her ability is basically like she can create like seeds. And okay, the deal is, I don't like this ability for a very, I don't know, maybe it's like a pet peeve or just like, you know, something that wouldn't bother other people, but the ability basically allows her to make a seed of anything, even if it's not something that currently exists. So like she'll make an elixir that can heal people, she'll make like a world tree that summons like a freaking god and things like that, and it's like, what are the limitations on this ability exactly? Like, normally in a story like this, you establish a limitation, right? So the character cannot solve anything that comes up. Like, they have to think about it, right? But in this story, they don't really, like, establish these limitations, but they still play it off like the character has to play around limitations, which I find a little annoying. It's like, I like to know why the main character can't just do this, or why they didn't try to do this. Like, there's a point where she makes a particular plant, and it can, like, reproduce into, you know, like, smaller versions, and then, like, continuously reproduce. And I thought to myself, like, okay, the point of this plant is to get rid of miasma, right? But they haven't really established limitations on her ability, other than she can, you know, the limit on how many seeds she can make a day. So couldn't she theoretically just make a seed that just gets rid of all the miasma? And it's like, okay, well, you could say like, oh, well, no, she can't do that because she ran out of magic once. And here's what I pose to you. In the story, there is a particular tree, right, that she creates. And this tree it basically has the ability to host what is arguably a godly entity, right? And she does not pass out. She makes this tree and is fine. She shows no sign of being tired, really. And then, but you're saying she can't do something that could just dispel like all this miasma or whatever? I don't know, it just seemed a little weird to me that she could make some tree that's like a godly entity, but she can't dispel miasma with plants. Like, why is this thing possible, but that's not? And then another time, like, she makes like a potion, and then like this potion, like, can basically cure anything and give like all of your energy back. But she can't dispel the miasma, and it's like, why? I don't really get it. Like, if they established a reason, like miasma is so much harder to get rid of, then I would understand it. But then she was able to make this other plant that splits up and does it. So it basically does the same thing, except more steps. And I'm thinking, like, okay, well, the author, really, the only reason they did that is because they wanted, like, these cool shots of, like, oh man, there's like a field of these flowers or whatever. And it's like, well, you have to, like, have a reason as to why they don't do these things that are, like, obvious choices, right? Like, oh, I can make a plant that gives me a whole bunch of mana, so then I can make more plants. Like, okay, well, why isn't that a thing? Like, explain it, right? Because the only established rule, seemingly, is that she has a limit on how many she can make a day, but it doesn't really seem like the quality of the plant changes that limit. Because she was able to make this godly tree and not get tired. But then, like, 10 sunflower seeds, like, just kills her. So it's like, what? like, I mean, unless like a god tier, you know, entity is the equivalent of like 10 pineapples, I don't know what's going on there with the power scaling, and it makes things really confusing because her ability is like the main tool. So it's like, well, you have to establish some rules. I don't know. It's like a very weird, I don't know, power system that they just don't really explain at all, but they use a lot. Like, if they didn't use it a lot, I wouldn't really care, but it's like a focus, and they don't really explain how anything works. They don't really explain the limitations and things like that. So, like, I can infer that she can't do certain things, but they never necessarily show that she can't do those things or say it. Because if you show it, like, oh, she tries to do this and it fails, okay. Or you show her try to make something really overpowered and she ends up like hurting herself or something. Like she ends up like bleeding because like it was too much for her body or whatever. That is a way of showing it like, okay, I get it. She cannot do this. Like, okay. But they don't really do that. She passes out after she makes a lot of things, not a powerful thing. Like I said, she makes a godly plant, doesn't pass out. She makes 10 sunflower seeds, passes out. That doesn't really show me much, because like, okay, well, can she make one really godly plant? And if so, why does she not do that most of the time? That seems silly to me. And I mean, there are other things you could do, I guess. Like you could, I don't know, if you don't want to necessarily show it, you could just say it. Like, oh, there's limitations, or this guy is like a mage or whatever. He could just say, oh, well, your mana did drain a lot more when you did that. Now, I don't know why a godly flower is equivalent to like a sunflower seed, you know, pack. But hey, whatever. At least it's an explanation. I don't know. I think really that's like my main thing. Like the main focus in the series, the main like tool, I guess, is her ability, but it's not really defined, and it's like, it's kind of annoying just seeing her not do certain things, and then you ask, why is she not doing this? And it's like, there are very simple methods that she could use, but then they just don't do them, and it's like, why? Why? Have they not tested the limitations? And if so, like, why? And then even like the initial time that she passes out, they just make her do things like use magic until she passes out, and then they're surprised that she passes out because they didn't check her like mana abilities or whatever. And it's like, if you're like a magic academy or whatever, you don't check these things? I don't know. It just, realistically, the story is fine. I have no issues with the story. It's fine. But like the systems, I love looking at like world systems in these series, and this one just, I know it's not like the author's focus. I get it. The author just wanted an ability that basically does anything, and the way they did that is just make seeds that do anything. It's a little weird way to go around it, but whatever, I get it. But if you're going to do that, I expect you to at least try a little, you know, to make it make sense. And hey, listen, I don't know, maybe like what I was reading was different. Maybe 10 chapters later they explain it all. I don't know. I didn't like read the whole thing, you know, I didn't read 400 chapters, but I'm just, logically I would they didn't really show a good reason why you couldn't do overpowered things because of the whole like overpowered tree thing that didn't make her tired. If you removed the tree, everything would have been fine. But the fact that that exists and she didn't get that tired from it makes you wonder why she can't make one of these really overpowered plants here and there. I don't know. I think that one thing threw a wrench into everything. All they had to do was when they make the tree, just make her like bleed out or something, or like pass out. Like she like gets sick and, you know, they say, oh, never do that again. And it's like, oh, okay, you solved it. But they didn't do that, and so it makes a lot less sense whenever I'm reading it, and I'm like, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you trying to do this, or why haven't you shown that you can't do this? I don't know. Overall, I think it's, if you don't overanalyze magic systems, it's like a 6. It's fine. If you really, really overanalyze magic systems, it's like a 4. But, yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. I'd appreciate if you could like, comment, subscribe. If you have another series that you want me to, you know, talk about, let me know in the comments below. If I've already read it, I'll read it again. I don't care. And, I'll see ya.